Tonight, snowy siege, the marathon cleanup in Nova Scotia after a record-setting storm.
We're buried here.
I don't know how the hell we get out of here.
A monumental task ahead as people could be stuck for days.
A little claustrophobic at times, yeah, shack-wacky.
And some damage control from the Premier.
One thing that we're already faced with is having to give out less.
A reality check on Ottawa's new plan to lower food costs. Donald Trump's claim for presidential immunity rejected in court. Plus, a royal reunion under difficult circumstances. Prince Harry returns to the United Kingdom after his father's cancer diagnosis. And swept up in a curling comeback.
I told him we're going to win.
Making history at the Brier 35 years later.
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina.
Good evening, everyone. Federal reinforcements are heading to Atlantic Canada, where there is a massive cleanup underway tonight after a historic storm.
I excavated a door opening, and that was about it. It's a nightmare.
Clearing all this snow could take days, and with many still trapped in their homes, there are signs of desperation. Today, Ottawa approved extra snow clearing equipment from Parks Canada, and the Canadian Coast Guard will send helicopters to deliver critical supplies and help with evacuations. CTV's Atlantic Bureau Chief Creason Adjukate on the aftermath and the political storm, prompting an apology today from Nova Scotia's Premier.
A gripping image of just how much snow has consumed Cape Breton and how much work is ahead. People spent 4 days digging out. They're tired and desperate for help.
As you see, we're buried here. Buried.
Bernie Bizon says it took him almost 2 days just to carve a path.
As a private citizen, it's impossible to find anybody. That's why I put the sign at the end of the driveway, hoping it might catch somebody's attention.
Charlie Stephen and his wife are stuck behind more than a football field's length of snow.
Oh, it's been a rough battle, I'll tell you. Still haven't found anybody to plow the driveway.
Stephen took to social media, begging for assistance, saying he missed his medical appointment.
I don't know how the hell we get out of here. You didn't need a helicopter, I think.
People blocked by walls of snow walked for essentials, while others had to use a skidoo or quad just to get around.
No one's gonna come plow us out. No one. We're doing it.
Up to 150 centimeters of snow is being reported in many areas of Cape Breton, and there is not enough equipment to keep up. When help is arriving has yet to be determined.
We're constantly trying to get more equipment and trying to move stuff in here, but right now we haven't received anything.
Yesterday, Nova Scotia's Premier questioned why a state of emergency was declared, calling it a PR issue by the municipality. Today, he apologized.
They're doing what they think is necessary. But I think what I was trying to say, and I didn't say it very well, and I certainly I feel very bad about that, is that nobody was waiting to spring into action until that was made.
Cars are still buried in this parking lot, and this apartment had to be evacuated after the heavy snow damaged part of the roof. Most of the residents are staying at this hotel, waiting to go back home.
If someone needs an emergency or something, you know, it'd be nice if, you know, they had the infrastructure in place to kind of just have it done, you know, as soon as possible.
There are still so many side roads that need to be cleared in Cape Breton, and then there's the rural roads. And Nova Scotia's Premier says those won't be cleared until at least Friday. Omar.
All right, Grayson, thank you. The historic storm slamming the American West Coast is on the move for a third straight day. In Los Angeles, first responders pulled out a man from the raging waters. He had jumped in to save his dog. Both are now safe. In Northern California, strong winds were the worry. Ow! This woman barely escaped. The onslaught of rain triggered nearly 400 mudslides, including in some of the most high-end neighborhoods. The damage may hit $11 billion U.S. There is also a cost to higher grocery prices. More people are turning to food banks just to get by. Today, Ottawa unveiled new measures to investigate higher food prices. But as CTV's Annie Bergeron-Oliver reports, there are questions about whether the federal government needs to spend in order to help Canadians save.
Instead of browsing grocery aisles, more and more Canadians are turning to the shelves at local food banks like the Canada Food Cupboard, where demand is up 55% since the pandemic began and costs have nearly doubled.
We used to be able to give our families a 10-pound bag of potatoes. With the increase in the price of potatoes, we're now having to give out only 5 pounds. So we're having to adjust the volumes of food that we're giving out.
Food inflation has increased from 2.8% in January 2019 to a peak of 10.4% in January 2023. Now it's sitting at 5% and still well above overall inflation.
It's hard to stretch that dollar, and in a lot of cases, food is the thing that they spend the least on because they don't have any money left over.
Ottawa is spending $5 million to investigate soaring grocery prices. The industry minister has been working with grocery giants to bring costs down, but recently Metro announced it's upping prices.
No, I'm not satisfied. And you know, I always want more for consumers because this is not about us. It's not about the government. It's about all of us as Canadians.
But experts aren't sure what that money will actually do.
Who knows what it's for? To good marketing, maybe. The root causes of inflation and the shrinkflation and greedflation have been well known.
High energy costs, labor shortages, and higher wages are all factors linked to the rise in food prices. So are spiking input costs for food producers who say they've been struggling to pay the bills for years, and the problem is only getting worse.
44% of our growers are operating at a loss presently, and 3/4 have difficulty offsetting production cost increases.
The federal government is looking at increasing competition as one way to bring down grocery prices, with the industry minister currently courting international grocers. Omar?
All right, Annie, thank you. Donald Trump is courting voters ahead of November's presidential election. And tonight he is using a legal blow to fire up his supporters. Today, an appeals court rejected Trump's claims that he is immune from prosecution. And that means he can face trial on charges he plotted to overturn the results of the 2020 election. Here's CTV's Washington Bureau Chief Joy Malbin.
It's become a rallying cry at Donald Trump events.
You have to give a president full and total immunity.
But a federal appeals court slapped down Trump's claim that he is somehow shielded from prosecution. Trump has pleaded not guilty to plotting to overturn the 2020 election that led to that deadly attack on the Capitol by Trump supporters January 6th. In a unanimous ruling, the 3 judges didn't mince words, saying such immunity would collapse America's constitutional system of separate powers. And we cannot accept that the office of the presidency places its former occupants above the law for all time. Saying for the purpose of this case, President Trump has become Citizen Trump and can be prosecuted. Lashing out on social media, Trump said every future president will now face the opposite party's vicious retribution after leaving office. And he has his Republican defenders who insist this was not criminal.
President Donald Trump did not engage in insurrectional rebellion against the United States. Democrat operatives are attempting to use this lie to illegally take President Trump off the ballot.
Facing 91 charges in all, Trump's strategy has been to delay and delay his trials while he campaigns for the Republican nomination. Already fundraising off his latest legal loss, a former rival made this bold prediction.
My guess is that he will be, more likely than not, a convicted felon when he gets on the stage at the nominating convention.
Why this matters, voters have told pollsters in swing states that if Trump was convicted of a crime, they'd think twice about voting for him. Trump says he will appeal to the Supreme Court. Omar?
All right, Joy, thank you. And joining us now for more on what this all means is CTV News political analyst Eric Ham. Eric, Trump and his legal team have until Monday to file an appeal with the U.S. Supreme Court. What's the likelihood that the highest court will even take up this case?
It's unclear if, in fact, the Supreme Court will take this case up because, one, we know that the judges were all unanimous in their decision, but also it was a very thorough, compelling telling and just overall rebuke of Donald Trump and his claim of immunity. So it's unclear if or what issues the Supreme Court would actually address. And also, because it only requires 4 judges to actually decide to reject a particular case, we know the 3 liberal justices on the court will certainly do so. And the wild card always remains the Chief Justice, John Roberts, and it's unclear what he will do in a situation like this.
Now, as we heard, Trump is already using this legal setback to generate money for his campaign. But looking ahead, how damaging could this be for his reelection bid?
Well, not damaging at all, because we know that Donald Trump has always been playing for time, and this loss is still going to do a lot to generate resources for his base. What Donald Trump is concerned about is actually if this case actually gets back on the docket for the trial that is set to begin in March. And so if that happens, that could be potentially damaging, because the last thing Donald Trump wants is to actually be in a criminal trial while he's actively campaigning for president of the United States.
All right, Eric, thank you for this tonight. A Palestinian Canadian who had been missing in Gaza for over 2 weeks has surfaced in a social media post.
Live from Gaza. It's February the 6th, 2024.
In the video, Mansour Shuman appears to be well and explains the circumstances of his sudden disappearance. He says he lost touch with family while taking cover from gunfire in Khan Yunis without his phone. Shuman has been documenting aid efforts in the region. Israel's military said today 31 hostages held in Gaza have been pronounced dead. This as the Canadian government revealed sanctions against nearly a dozen people affiliated with Hamas. CTV's Judy Trin with a look at the measures and the criticism.
We will be sanctioning Hamas leaders and Islamic Jihad leaders today.
Canada is targeting 11 known terrorist leaders who planned and participated in the surprise attacks on Israeli border communities. The sanctions include blocking them from entering Canada and freezing their assets. Measures, security experts say, are already in place.
I think that there's a very theatrical element to this. If Palestinian Islamic Jihad and Hamas and the individuals here have any assets in Canada, they should already have been frozen under the criminal code.
Critics also point out that unlike the U.S., Canada hasn't yet taken action against extremist Israeli settlers who have attacked Palestinians in the West Bank. Meanwhile, Israel's military spokesperson announced that 31 of the remaining hostages are dead. That's more than a fifth of the captives believed to be held by Hamas in Gaza. A death toll that could result in renewed calls from victims' families to end the hostilities. Israel warned it will soon push into the border town of Rafah, where it believes remaining Hamas leaders are hiding.
Tonight, American and Qatari officials say they're inching closer to a deal to free Israeli hostages in exchange for Palestinian prisoners. But Omar, negotiations are fragile and have broken down before, erupting in new attacks.
All right, Judy, thank you. There is a new snapshot tonight of what Canadians think about the country's response to another major conflict, the one in Ukraine. CTV's Kevin Gallagher on that and the politics of a new deal that created sparks in the House of Commons today.
All those opposed to the motion will please rise.
Mr. Polyev.
Liberal boos rang out.
Mr. Bazan.
Mr. Bazan.
Mr. Kimmich.
Mr. Kimmich.
As the Conservatives voted against a free trade deal with Ukraine.
The Conservatives continue to stand against Ukraine. It is inconceivable.
The agreement still passed without Conservative support, as they say language about promoting carbon pricing was untenable.
We will send Ukraine artillery and rockets, not carbon taxes.
Ukraine has had a price on carbon since 2011, something necessary if it wants to join the EU one day. Still, the Tories say Trudeau undermined Ukraine when he invited Yaroslav Hunka to a gala in Toronto with the Ukrainian president. On the same day, the former veteran of a Nazi unit was honored in the House of Commons after former Speaker Anthony Rota invited him.
He said that the former speaker had to resign over doing the exact same thing. So will he hold himself to the very same standard and admit that he's not fit for office?
This Conservative Party no longer stands with Ukraine.
The Prime Minister's office says Hunka's name was submitted by the Ukrainian Canadian Congress. He did not attend the gala, adding, Knowing what is known now, the individual shouldn't have been invited. This political spat comes as new data shows Canadian support of Ukraine's war effort is starting to wane. The Angus Reid survey found 25% say Canada is doing too much to support Ukraine, nearly double the number who said this after Russia invaded. While it's largely conservative voters propelling this trend, the poll still says a majority of Canadians and Tory supporters want Canada to back Ukraine. Omar?
All right, Kevin, thanks. A suspect in West Africa has been charged over the sextortion of a BC boy who took his own life last year. Police say someone posing as a teenage girl tricked the boy into sending explicit photos of himself.
That offender then blackmailed the youth with threats to share his images with his family and his friends unless he complied with demands of purchasing gift cards to send the offender.
RCMP traveled to Nigeria last summer where they worked with local authorities to arrest a 26-year-old who faces charges of money laundering, extortion, and child pornography. 2 of 4 men accused of conspiring to kill police officers at the Alberta border blockade will be freed. Jerry Morin and Christopher Lysak pleaded guilty to lesser weapons charges and will be released after getting credit for time served. Both were arrested in 2022 at the border blockade in protest of COVID-19 vaccine mandates and pandemic restrictions. Coming up.
This will be great for himself and his father to have the conversations that need to be had.
A rare moment of royal unity, plus remembering country superstar Toby Keith.
How do you like me now? Now that I'm on my way, you still think I'm crazy, standing here today.
Prince Harry made a royal return to the UK today to be by his father's side, a day after the King's revelation of his cancer diagnosis. Here's CTV's Jill McIshon.
For the first time since his cancer diagnosis, King Charles appeared in public and waved to crowds outside Buckingham Palace. Rushing to his side, Prince Harry, seen alone, arriving in the UK on an overnight flight from the United States. The visit between father and son said to be the first in months.
This will be great for himself and his father to have the conversations that need to be had.
King Charles was diagnosed with cancer after undergoing a medical procedure for an enlarged prostate last week. The type of cancer has not been revealed, and royal watchers expect that information to stay a tightly held secret.
Unless there is a drastic change for the worse or hopefully for the better, I don't think we're going to be hearing much else about this.
There seems to be some optimism around the diagnosis. The British Prime Minister, who is in regular contact with the King, spoke on London radio today.
This has been caught early, and now everyone will be wishing him that he gets the treatment that he needs and makes a full recovery.
Downing Street later clarified the Prime Minister was simply noting the swift intervention of the King's medical team. Less than 2 years on the throne, King Charles will need to step back from public life, focusing on his core constitutional duties. Prince William is expected to take on a greater role for his father, along with Queen Camilla. Catherine, Princess of Wales, is still recovering from recent abdominal surgery. The King is expected to spend this week relaxing with family.
But I think, of course, I think he'd be delighted that he's got both of his sons back on home soil.
Well, there is plenty of speculation of a royal reconciliation in the family. It is unclear if the two princes will meet in person at all. Omar.
All right, Jill, thank you. The entertainment world has lost a star in American country music. Singer Toby Keith has died.
I should have been a cowboy. I should have learned to rope and ride.
Keith's debut single, Should Have Been a Cowboy, topped the charts in the early 90s, and he remained a mainstay of country. After 9/11, the former oil rigger found even more success with music that reflected the surge of American patriotism. The singer-songwriter died of stomach cancer yesterday at the age of 62. Still ahead.
Always been loud in a quiet way.
A Montreal singer-songwriter leads the Juno nominations.
Crowded place, I always wanna stay, wanna go, wanna stay, wanna go. I don't know I get sad on my birthday.
The mother of a mass shooter has been convicted in her son's violent crime for the first time in American history.
We find the defendant guilty of involuntary manslaughter.
Jennifer Crumbley faces up to 15 years in jail in Michigan's deadliest school shooting. In 2021, Ethan Crumbley used a handgun gifted by his parents to shoot and kill 4 classmates at his high school. He was 15 at the time. One victim's father calls the verdict a milestone.
This verdict is going to echo throughout every household in the country.
The teenager was earlier sentenced to life in prison. Crumbley's husband will be tried separately in March. An initial investigation into Boeing's mid-air fiasco has found the door plug that ripped off its jet did not have bolts.
The current system is not working because it's not delivering safe aircraft. So we have to make some changes to that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The head of the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration testified before lawmakers today and promised to step up oversight. Boeing said it takes accountability for the accident and will cooperate with investigators. A few days after the Grammys celebrated Canadian icons like Celine Dion and Joni Mitchell, the Junos looked to the future.
I feel like a zombie, I'll die at the party. Yeah, you'll find my body fully covered in confetti.
Leading the way with 6 Juno nominations was Montreal's Charlotte Cardin. Next up was Toronto R&B singer Daniel Caesar, who received 5 nominations. And Ottawa's breakout star Talk got 5 as well. The Junos take place in Halifax on March 24th. After the break, a curling comeback, hitting the ice 35 years between Briars. An amateur curler in St. John's who put his playing career on ice on the national stage is making a record-breaking comeback. After a 35-year break, Alex Smith is finally getting his second shot to rock it. Here's CTV's Garrett Barry.
At the national stage and just 23 years old.
You know, I was young, cocky, didn't know any different.
Facing off against the greats, and after an impressive 7-4 record, he was sure he'd be back. But his attempts to qualify again never worked out.
As much as I want to go, so does every other competitive curler in the province.
Until now.
I think they're all in a bit of shock here, Team Simmons.
With these handshakes, Alex Smith made history, winning the provincial title and securing his place at the national championship. A second shot, 35 years later. This season, when Team Simmons lost their lead to injury, they needed a replacement.
So we needed somebody with that skill set to play lead and maybe third. And it became quickly evident that Alex was the choice.
Andrew said, so what do you think? And I told him, we're going to win.
The team now has less than a month to prepare to play against some of the best curlers in the game.
I can't imagine how it's going to be. I'm sure there'll be a few nerves going.
Smith hasn't shared much with his team, just 1 or 2 old pictures.
There's nothing quite like throwing a rock, missing, and having 6, 7, 8,000 people go, ooh, as you miss. I mean, it's different. You know, I'm just trying to emphasize that enjoy yourselves.
His advice to younger teammates who weren't even born when Smith last competed, just embrace the moment. Garrett Barry, CTV News, St. John's.
Embrace the moment. And that's a snapshot of this Tuesday. For all of us at CTV National News, thank you for watching. Good night, and see you tomorrow.